Hey, everybody. Welcome to this fireside chat. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Just seeing the numbers of people trickle in from the waiting room. So I'm going to give that a moment to let everybody settle in while we're waiting. We'll get started in a moment, but how are you today, Deedy? How's everything going?
It's been a wild last what is it, 24 hours and maybe a little more.
Oh my God.
It was my birthday yesterday, so completely soured the mood for that.
Oh, happy
But
birthday, though.
there's just been just getting a flood of inbound of messages of people worried about, hey, what am I supposed to do here, and what's going on, and just hearing these stories of people stuck in airports, not sure, should I come back, should I not come back, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but just how horrendously, communicated, if nothing else, the whole policy has just caused a lot of grief for so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we can bring some clarity to everybody here tonight on what the latest is because it's changed so much. And I think for now, like right now, this moment, if people are stuck outside and they can't get flights, I think they're going to be okay. That's my general sense, but we can talk more about that. But I think we have a good number of people, so we'll go ahead and officially get started. And thank you and welcome to everybody who's joining us today. My name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm here with Deedy Doss, and we'll both be introducing ourselves shortly. But before we do that, just wanted to get into some housekeeping rules for this fireside chat slash AMA that we're going to be hosting for the next hour. First of all, if you have questions, we're going to be answering those through the Q&A panel. We'll be monitoring that throughout, and we would advise you to consider using the anonymous attendee function for any questions that you might be asking, as there are a number of people here, and this is not a confidential forum. So please just keep that in mind as you ask any questions. Um, I'll let Deedy do his own disclaimers, but on my end, I'm a lawyer, and so I have to tell everybody that this webinar is for educational purposes only. This is not legal advice, and if you need legal advice, please speak with a qualified attorney in a private consultation. That would be a one-on-one privileged setting where a lawyer can actually advise you on what you should do with your life. So this is general education only, and whatever answers I may give to questions, please take it with a grain of salt because I'm only answering the questions of the text. I don't know your life story, your situation, other details I can't ask you about. But my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law in Palo Alto, California. We're a boutique immigration law firm for startups and founders and VCs. And we've helped almost 5,000 individuals navigate the visa, green card, citizenship process in the United States. My dad was an immigration lawyer. My mom's an immigrant from Germany, and I'm a certified specialist in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization. I'm the host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast and the author of the best-selling book, Ask Sophie, The Founder's Guide to Visas and Green Cards. And I'm here with my amazing, illustrious guest, Deedy Doss. And Deedy, could you please introduce yourself and tell us all about what you're working on and your claim to being an immigrant?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sophie. Wonderful introduction. First and foremost, Sophie was my lawyer through everything, and that's how I know her. I've been working with her for quite some time. Right now, I'm a partner at a venture firm called Menlo Ventures, where I do early stage software investing primarily in AI and technology startups. I was formerly on an H-1B when, starting at 2015, and since currently have a green card. And my main disclaimer for everything I'm gonna say is,
Oh,
this is an evolving situation. So everything we say are based on, the facts that we know right now, and that situation might change in 12 to 24 hours and more. And a lot of the other things we might say are speculative. So just keep that in mind.
yeah. And they might change in 12 to 24 minutes for all we know
Yeah.
based on everything that's happening. So let's uh let's just dive right into it. We've both written it's extensive stuff online. So if anybody wants to find out more about us, Deedee's got a wonderful blog, a very popular Twitter account. we have tons of online resources, but there's a lot of questions. And before we get into those, and please keep in mind that instead of, I see some people are putting questions in the webinar chat. That's harder for us to manage and answer questions in. So if you could please use the anonymous attendee option in the Q&A panel, that would be most effective for us to be able to try to answer your questions today. But let's roll it back to yesterday. Where were you when you first started hearing about some of these new changes that have been going on?
Well, I'm gonna ask the same to you, but I'll tell you sort of maybe my quick background with the entire thing. I think the first thing I saw was I was in meetings on Friday, and I get a flurry of messages from people with the Bloomberg notification saying, "Hey, Trump has a new $100,000 fee for H-1Bs." Obviously, I was jarred, and I was closely monitoring the situation since. And then we had the White House press briefing where we heard more about the H-1B policy, and Howard Lutnick came and said a bunch of things about how it was per year and annual and recurring and applied to everybody who was already on an H-1B. Following that, then you had the third piece of news, which is the actual executive order in writing, and reading that sort of contradicted with a bunch of the things that Lutnick said. And then further today, you had a flurry of news from both, this rapid response Twitter account, which is the White House official one of their Twitter accounts, and then the press secretary saying, clarifying a bunch of things which were absolutely ambiguous, further contradicting some of the things said, saying that no, you don't need to travel to come back by the 21st. It's only applicable to new H-1B holders and nobody current. And it's a one-time fee, not an annual fee. But there's still so many questions unanswered. That's kind of been my journey. I'm curious to hear yours. I'm
Yeah,
sure you've
yeah.
also
I
been
I have
bombarded.
a distributed team between our Palo Alto and Houston offices, and fortunately, it was our quarterly planning meeting yesterday, and I had convened everybody in Palo Alto. So we were all together when we heard this news, and at first I thought it was a joke. Then I thought it would be like $100,000 per company per year or something. And then by the time I listened to the president and Mr. Lutnick's remarks and actually read the proclamation, exactly as you said, so many versions. And so we were scrambling late on these, listservs with other lawyers and advocates from around the country, from different types of institutions, figuring out what does this mean? What do we have to advise our clients? And we put out an advisory last night in an abundance of caution to companies and their beneficiaries that anybody outside the United States on an H-1B or even an H-4 dependent work visa needed to do their best to get back into the United States by midnight Eastern time tonight, because we had no idea what this broad-reaching proclamation would do. And if you read the plain language of it, it's incredibly broad and way more expansive than the like rolled back language we've been seeing trickle throughout the day. So, based on that, we were extremely concerned that if somebody didn't make it back by midnight, like what if they can't get a flight, or what if a flight sits on the tarmac for 5 extra minutes, would they be essentially banned? And I have several individuals who are outside of the United States waiting to do their visa stamping and come in, or people on business trips who aren't able to get flights back in time, employers, emailing me through all hours of the middle of the night and early morning. And I got interviewed by several media outlets, including a Business Insider article that just got published, and the New York Times. And there is also a video interview with our mutual acquaintance, Shashank, in the Hindustan Times, right? And so there's been a lot, and we've been trying to explain all the latest as it's been evolving. And I think let's recap where we think
Yeah.
we're actually at right now, right? I think that'd be helpful for
I was just gonna
people.
ask you that. I think people would love to hear it from you. You're the immigration
Okay.
in the house. Like, where does this stand today? What are the facts as we know it today? And I guess what are the questions that we still don't know today?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Great question. So I think where we're at right now is this administration wants to do two things. They want to switch up the way H-1Bs are done to preference companies that they think are in the national interest and to potentially scale back the IT consulting industry. And that is going to evolve as the proclamation might get edited. But people who have H-1Bs already should still be able to come to the United States past midnight. So if they didn't get onto one of those flights or they got a flight for Monday, it should be okay. They should be able to come back home. That is the latest guidance that has been sent out to Customs and Border Protection. Likewise, there's this parallel thing of the gold card. And if we want, we can talk a little bit about that too. And that's creating a $1 million and $2 million version, a $1 million for self-petitioners, a $2 million for business sponsored, and then like a $5 million platinum version that hasn't been announced yet. And the proclamation on that says that it's kind of going to shove the other EB1A and EB2 and EB3 green cards aside to make that happen. And maybe they were trying to find a way to do it that was more elegant than ending EB5 because they can't technically do that. But there's like a lot of legal issues with the way that proclamation has been written as well. So I think I thought this afternoon that several lawsuits would be filed, but I think that behind the scenes, there are probably a bunch of people talking to the administration, explaining, "Hey, this isn't, this is untenable the way you guys did this," and so that's why there was this reaction, like, "Oh no, 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 it's just for next year's H-1B season," but that's also not how it's written. And then there's all this ambiguity, but now they're saying like people in the States now on H-1Bs are fine to stay. You're not going to be charged to amend or transfer or do a concurrent H-1B. But there's kind of this like ambiguous area for people who are getting H-1B stamping for their first H-1B now, who are still outside, who don't need to go through next year's lottery, but haven't yet activated their H-1Bs. So that is my best current understanding of the
Got it.
situation.
And just to be explicit, so are you saying that if someone is on H-1B and excluding that sort of stamping situation, then you shouldn't feel restricted to travel, or what kind of guidance are you giving
I
people?
would say nobody on H-1B should plan to leave the United States tonight, tomorrow, at least until Monday, when hopefully there will be more clarity. It would be great to see that people can come into airports, after 9 p.m. Pacific tonight and just wait for like more official announcements on Monday because maybe the proclamation language is going to be changed.
Got it, got it. And then maybe a couple of other questions that I've been hearing a lot of, Sophie, is, and maybe we'll start with some of the easy ones. But prior to the actual executive order coming out, a lot of people thought this was an annual fee that you had to pay per applicant, and Lutnick said it would be 6 years. Right
Mhm.
now, is your interpretation that it is actually a one-time fee that yeah, that employers will have to pay per applicant just once when they get their new H-1B?
The plain language of the existing proclamation that's currently on the White House website says the Homeland Security shall restrict decisions on petitions not accompanied by a $100,000 payment for H-1Bs who are currently outside of the United States for 12 months following the effective date of the proclamation. And then there's all sorts of ways that they could try to extend it or do additional rulemaking and try to make this last longer. But as far as I can tell, it doesn't contemplate like if that would be an initiation fee or if it would be like every single job change, job transfer amendment. But I mean, hopefully it would just be one time, but it's still such an, I mean, can we just go back to that? Like, who's going to pay $100,000 to get somebody a visa, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is I think the speculative part when I'm speaking with founders and companies, both startups and bigger companies, it's unclear who's going to pay this, and it's still not super clear to me whether it's, you know, terrible or not. If it is a one-time fee, there are some arguments that are, and some founders are saying, you know, this is actually not the worst thing in the world. 15% or less usually of a non H-1B dependent employer is are of the workforce is on H-1B, and for that number of people, if you do some math around how much they're getting paid, which is, call it, you know, 150 to 200K for a tech role at least on an H-1B, and if they stay for 3 to 4 years, there are arguments that 100K one time is maybe not the worst thing, but then, and especially for bigger companies, may be able to eat that cost. But then as you get smaller and smaller, and then, you know, what concerns me the most is when you think of new grads. Then it becomes a bit of a slippery slope. I mean, if there's so many people who come to the U.S. for you know, a master's, PhD, undergrad studies, so CS, and maybe the first job you get doesn't really pay all that much, and it becomes a much harder thing to do to get jobs. So what happens? What are the trickle down effects of that? Do you have a, you know, Sophie, do you have a
Yeah,
view on
I'm
that,
worried.
and
I'm
how
worried
do you see
about
it?
the new grads, and I'm worried about this US small and medium-sized businesses, and I'm also worried about the early stage startups because I think all of those people, teams, businesses, they are scrappy and they're the source of our innovation, right? It's like, well, where do billion-dollar companies start from? They start from like ramen and hacker homes and people trying to make it work, coding for months and months and months and months. They don't have tons of money to spend on these like highfalutin H1B wages that would be increased by 100K. It's often very difficult for them simply to pay the prevailing wage, especially for people in San Francisco. And um, you've invested in a lot of amazing companies, but like they all had to start out from somewhere. And over half the unicorn companies have at least one immigrant founder. And it's my only hope for these small companies is that we can get the national interest exception to apply to these H-1Bs. And I think we will have strong arguments for this. There was a national interest thing that happened in COVID when there was, when travel was shut down. We could still do travel letters for people saying that they were needed in these critical infrastructure industries. There's also another model for national interest, which is a type of green card called national interest waiver, where we show how somebody's going to help America in the future and how how it would be like silly to try to replace them because they're so unique. So I hope that we could get that sort of a thing through. But if this 100K fee really truly goes live, then I think most of the H-1Bs I'll be filing will just always have a national interest exception argument, application, whatever that ends up looking like, because I think this could really squeeze out recent grads and early stage businesses, right?
Hmm. What do you, I mean, and if I recall correctly, when you read some of the language in the executive order, there were some, you know, to me at least, ambiguous wording around exceptions, around some like highly paid individuals or certain sorts of companies. What do you make of that? Is there any other clarity around what the exceptions to this might be from the wording that as we read it today?
Yeah. So the way the proclamation is composed, there's this long preamble, then a section about the restriction on entry, which says you basically can't come in unless there's this payment and it's going to be valid for 12 months. And then if somebody tries to come in without 100K, then it's not going to happen. And also, if you try to come in on a B visa to circumvent this somehow and then switch to an H-1B, that is potentially going to be penalized. And then it talks about how this is this exception. The restriction imposed pursuant to A and B shall not apply to any individual or people working for a company or all people working in an industry if Homeland Security determines in their discretion that the hiring of such people to be employed in the specialty occupation is in the national interest and doesn't pose a threat. So, for example, President loves AI, maybe they're just going to say, anybody working in AI is in the national interest. Just show that you have an AI job and you already get to pass. So what that would mean for those industries, if this, right, this is all subject to litigation and change, but if this goes through, then um, those industries would actually have it pretty good, right? Because then
Mm-hmm.
there's no lottery
Mm-hmm.
and they can just get a normal H-1B probably at any time of year because it wouldn't be backlogged. So there are potential industries that could really benefit if they're determined, en masse to be in the national interest. So it's very unclear. We'll have to see how that will play out, but that gives me a little bit of hope.
And I think another thing that's come up in chat, and we touched upon it a little bit, but I think people would love some clarity. People are asking a lot about, does this apply to renewals? So, after you're on your third year of an H-1B, you typically get it renewed for 3 more years. And does it apply to transfers between companies? So, as of the next in 2026, if I'm on an H-1B and I want to switch companies and I get my transfer done, does that company now have to pay that 100K fee? So, what do you make of those two situations in particular?
Yeah. Um, well, it seems that people who already hold H-1B status or who have H-1B status in their passports are not going to be affected. But it is not clear if new H-1B petitions filed next week for first-time H-1B employment would be covered. And then you're like, well, Sophie, it's not lottery season. Like, how could you file a new one next week? But there are cap exempt H-1Bs that are heavily used by universities and research nonprofits and nonprofit like hospitals affiliated with universities, and they're uncapped. And so those institutions file these all the time for professors and researchers and nurses. And so um, we are waiting to see what will happen there. But like if those people are currently outside of the US and wanting to come in, there is a chance that they could be affected by the plain language, but that is different from what those announcements said today. But I think if somebody is just like already in the US, got selected in this year's H-1B lottery, and then in 9 months they want to transfer jobs, like the way this is being interpreted, it's that those individuals will probably not need to have their companies pay an additional 100,000 for them.
Got it. Got it. And who do you think, when we take a step back and think about, hey, why does the government care about this? We obviously there's a lot of narrative around, maybe companies are laying off people, but also hiring H-1Bs. What do you make of is there why did Trump do this? Do you have an understanding of what is
Well, I'm psychic and telepathic, and here's my crystal ball. No. um,
well, I guess, does any good come of this at all?
Well, I think the president loves America, regardless of what you think about his, policies or practices. I think he is coming from that place, and he's uh, he's a master negotiator, and he's a, self-made billionaire. And so, I guess if I were to think about where this might be coming from, um, he wants to protect our nation. I mean, that's consistent with what he's doing for value chain and bringing back US manufacturing. And this is probably another example of a situation where he feels that there's been like a wrong to the country from this program over the years, and he's trying to take it back and use it for the people who he thinks um, are the most in the national interest. And so we'll be learning a lot more as this plays out on who specifically those groups are, what type of industries, what types of job roles. And, also there's a lot of questions about the legal basis for this. And is this in line with several important statutes like the Immigration and Nationality Act and the Administrative Procedures Act and all sorts of things. And so I know there are, many groups preparing for litigation. So we'll see if it's able to persist through those legal processes.
Right. Right. And a couple of other questions I've been seeing in the chat, I think, are worth mentioning. A lot of people are asking about if you're currently on an F1 on an OPT, working for maybe 2, 3 years after you graduated and you were planning on transitioning to an H-1B. Sure, I know we don't know what companies are going to do what, but I guess what I'm curious about is what are the other options those people should be looking at? Like, what should they be aware about in case, in the worst case where their company decides, hey, we're not going to pay your 100K fee? How would you not
Yeah,
advise them to
yeah,
navigate the scenario?
that's such a great question. There's a lot of varieties of ways that people choose to handle this, depending on where they're at in life, what country they're a citizen of. Um, There's always, only in cases of a good faith marriage, there's the 90-day fiancé marriage-based option. If you're already in the US, that's definitely the fastest. Our law prioritizes love over work. So, that's we're romantics at heart, I guess. I don't know. But that's one option. And I see this question also come up for many individuals who were laid off or who are fearing that there might be a layoff in their company. Like, how can we navigate this ourselves? So a really popular option with startup founders is the O1 visa for extraordinary ability, and it's not limited to founders. A lot of researchers and professors get it, but also lots of experts in other fields. You can get it for being an inventor or a TikTok influencer. So there's like a whole spectrum of jobs. You just have to have some sort of expertise in like a business, science, engineering type of field. And there's a lot of things we can argue about your past accomplishments to help you qualify. So that's one area. Of course, there are specific visas for people from certain countries. So the TN is available for citizens of Canada and Mexico, regardless of your country of birth. There's the E3 for Australians. There's the H-1B ones for people from Singapore and Chile. So those are all special. There's going back to school, and there's doing more day one CPT that some people do, or getting another degree to write it out. And I know, God, one poor guy, he's such a genius, but he's going to an elite medical school doing an MD PhD program because, he wanted to like ride this out, hoping for, certain legal changes to come through that would protect him. So that's one way. And then additionally, there are options. There's actually a really cool option that not enough people know about. Some people have heard of cap exempt H-1Bs, and I did just mention them in the university context, but there is a way to you can get more than one H-1B at the same time, and you can get H-1Bs for part-time work. So people are like coupling these paradigms together. So you could have a 5 hour a week cap exempt H-1B, and then you could have a full-time H-1B. And two really cool things have happened recently about this. One is there are certain fellowships that exist where somebody could get hired and get that 5 hour a week H-1B that's cap exempt. But the H-1B modernization rule that just came through last December made it available so that private companies who are employing workers and paying them to spend at least 50% of their time doing like an open source research project in conjunction with the university, or like mentoring an intern program for a nonprofit or a university. Those companies can get uncapped H-1Bs for that work for those employees. So there are ways that private startups could now qualify directly for cap exempt H-1Bs, which is amazing. And then the other innovation in H-1B world is that we've now been successful getting H-1Bs for solo founders bootstrapping as the first employee of their company to be the CEO, where they sign their own immigration forms for 18 months at a time. And that's totally legit under the H-1B modernization rule. And we've helped several people do it. So that's been a great option for people who are looking for that like backup in fear, not wanting to get laid off. They wouldn't go into a 60-day grace period if they have a company that they're doing part-time that qualifies for an H-1B. It's also great for founders. So there's actually quite a variety of options. And I think where the world is going is that we used to live in this like corporate paradigm, when I grew up, that and I kind of fell off the assembly line by being like an immigration lawyer. But a lot of my colleagues, wanted to go into like high banking and, corporate and like big tech and like going up the manager ranks and, coming out of Stanford. But I think more and more as people get more excited about startups, and there's also just more volatility in the world, the drive to be uh, in control of your own destiny and have a business and be self-reliant, even though there's a lot of risk involved in that. I think that's a trend for where we're going to see future generations of young people going. And also, I see that with Gen X and millennials as well as Gen Z.
Maybe one thing to just clarify, just based on the questions, and I know you touched upon it a little bit, Sophie, but
Mm.
this 100K one-time fee, as we know it today, that also does apply to cap exempt H-1Bs, right? It's not like
As far
it's
as
kind
we know
of
today,
right.
yeah, and it's pretty crazy because the rest of the H-1B laws around fees have reduced fees for nonprofits, and this does not. So, like, I think I have not been talking to any universities directly, but if I were, hiring a bunch of medical staffers to keep my hospital running with all these patients, I would be very, very concerned right now that we would not be able to staff because look, I said my dad was an immigration lawyer. The way he started his law firm was because there has been a nursing shortage in the US since the 1980s when I was born. So, like, there's still a nursing shortage. It's a major problem, and that's an immediate industry that could be dramatically affected by this if the language isn't changed.
Hmm. And it almost sounds like the universities get a double whammy because you have maybe fewer internationals coming in and paying, full tuition, and at the same time now you're paying this fee
Right.
for anyone on a even a cap exempt H-1B that you might hire. So
Exactly. And plus all the research funding cuts that have been going on. It's a lot for universities right now.
there's one last question I want to call out, but then maybe, we can
Yeah, I
go
can ask you
and
something, and
do
we can look at some of the Q&A.
yeah, but
I
like
love
the
this. I thought I was going to be in charge, but I love it when you're asking me questions. It's so fun. I get to talk and talk.
no, it's great. I mean, these are my genuine questions too. Let's like when it comes to startups and H-1B or foreign nationals who want to start a startup, what are the implications of this one-time fee for them in how you'd, sort of advise them to sequence the order of events? Would
Yeah,
you say go on another visa? Would you just pay the one-time fee? Like how does it affect entrepreneurs?
that's a great question. Well, I think if people already have what it takes to be called extraordinary and they don't have a spouse depending on them for work authorization, the O1's a clear choice because you get so many freedoms. There's no prevailing wage. So if you're in an early stage company that's really low on cash, that's okay. You don't have to get paid a lot. You can have it petitioned by an agent, and then you're allowed to have multiple streams of income as long as you're working in your field. So that's really wonderful. It's a stepping stone to the EB-1A, and it's already evidence that you can refer to that USCIS has deemed you to be a person of extraordinary ability. So those are all fantastic. The drawback if you're married and like if you're on H-1B and you reach certain milestones of the green card process, your spouse gets the H-4 EAD, but there's no equivalent in the world of O-1s. So the spouse visa is called the O-3, but O-3 spouses don't get work authorization. So you have to go through the green card process or your spouse has to get an independent visa. So the O-1 is great. For starters, startup founders seeking H-1Bs, I would say right now, based on the latest that we've been hearing through the grapevine with all this stuff, should still be fine for people who already got through the H-1B lottery. And if you're in the US, then it also seems like people on STEM OPT an OPT who gets selected in next year's H-1B lottery, like if you don't do visa stamping and if you just stay in the US, like maybe the fee wouldn't apply to you even if you get selected in the lottery. So
And is that because like the language as written says it
yeah,
only applies when
yeah,
you're coming in? So if you don't
exactly.
leave, then technically you may not have to ever pay that fee.
Exactly. But
Hmm.
but then like there's also a legal definition of like entry and admission, and maybe
Hmm.
you could argue that it's like a fictional entry because of the status change. I don't know about that. My law school professor invented the Flutie doctrine, which was like a Supreme Court case, and it had to do with the difference from being paroled into the country and admitted into this is like really nerded out immigration law stuff that you can get deep, deep into. So there's probably stuff there I'm not aware of right now, but I think there's an argument that it wouldn't, and they're also saying it's like for new H-1Bs coming in from the lottery. So maybe if you're already here, really unknown. But I think for people who already have an H-1B and who are already in the United States, based on what we know now, like any sort of entrepreneurial pathway you want to do with an H-1B should work out just great, actually. Hopefully, knock on wood. Like fingers crossed.
Got it. Well, maybe Sophie, what you can do is like, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But then there
Yeah.
are maybe I think 47 questions on the Q&A. So we could also, you have covered a lot of them already, but we could maybe
Okay.
rapid fire through them.
Yeah, that would be fun. I guess what I want to know from you before we go into that, Deedy, is like you're meeting so many founders and you're doing due diligence on so many companies. And I think some of the questions that immigrant founders are afraid to ask of a VC, but would love to know like a general viewpoint on is like, how much does their immigration status matter when they're going through due diligence? And I'm also just curious from your side, like, are you seeing a lot of great companies, continue to come from immigrant founders?
On the latter, that's, a clear one. Yes. I don't want to attribute causation and correlation to these things, but it almost feels like, immigrant founders are sacrificing so much to be in this country that, the hunger and drive is just insane. I mean, I can give you a quote that an immigrant founder told me today. They said, I'm here for a reason. And if I'm not serving my mission, I'll just go back home and relax. I'm not here to, screw around. So, you know, there is like a bias towards immigration founders being super super hungry and dedicating their lives to this mission. I mean, they've sacrificed family and the comforts of being home often to come here, and that wasn't for not like they want to actually prove something out of it. Now, does it affect how we decide to invest in companies? I think the reality for across the venture ecosystem is not every venture capitalist has a very strong understanding of immigration and what the details are. I mean, we're not immigration lawyers. I do think that overall, especially when you're doing earlier stage deals where this it disproportionately matters, the data shows that the primary risk of early stage companies is really the team. And so, whether we like it or not, it is a risk factor. I mean, depending on what kind of your actual immigration situation is, we do have to underwrite that risk. I mean, if you are here on a H-1B, or you need to get a bunch of stuff done in order to be stable in this country, whatever that might mean to you, then there is also a real risk that you might just not be here, and that's a significant risk for the business, especially if your whole team is here. And so it is something that we think about. I will say overwhelmingly, most founders aren't what I would call in critical immigration situations by the time I see them, where they've mostly figured their stuff out.
I
So
think
for
like
them,
10
it
years
does.
ago, a lot of people would come here on just like a visitor visa and try to raise money, and then they had to sort out their immigration, which was a little more tenuous. I think now
Hmm.
people kind of have it figured out before they seek investment. But actually, I have another question because there's this like old mythology that in order to raise money, you should have a very freshly incorporated startup. But often for immigration, like the startup needs to maybe be a few months old and maybe it needs other revenue sources and maybe the cap table like isn't completely clean because there's like a family investor or there had to be a loan or something to fund the salary. So can that be explained? Like if the founder is like, look, and they're just straight with you, like, look, in order to deal with my immigration status and like make sure everything was in a good position, I had to take XYZ actions. That is why my corporate documentation looks this way. Like, is that a conversation you're at least open to having?
Well, for me personally, yes. I think different investors would look at it in different ways. I think, I mean, to be completely transparent, like in the worst case, they might be like, behind, they won't say this publicly, but they'll be thinking, this goes over my head. I don't really know what you're talking about, and so, I default to no. And so that
Oh.
that does happen in certain cases where, you're not spending often a whole lot of time in every single investment decision, and this might just send off alarm bells in your mind, and you're like, I don't know, it seems a little bit suspicious, so I don't know whether I should do this. That probably happens in some percent of the time. I think in most cases, people are like, look, I'm going to judge this company on the merits of the company and the risks I see. And so unless I'm seeing big risk to the business, small things like that are probably not going to be even asked or looked at until yeah, at all. I mean, so I don't think it really matters. I think people should just be focused on, the actual function of building a good company, hiring the right people, and working on good problems
Making something
and
people
innovating.
want,
So yeah,
helping somebody. Yeah, making something of value. Cool. Okay. Thank you. That's super, super helpful. So should we do some rapid fire questions? A lot
let's
of
do it. Let's do
okay,
it.
we'll just do
Maybe.
it.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you do it? I could have read out some of them to you, but we can go through the list and
Okay. Okay. Are H-1B visa extensions considered as new petitions? We think that this 100K thing will not apply to extensions, but we're not sure. Someone's on F1 OPT who recently graduated from the US, and if they want to transition from F1 OPT to H-1B, will this fee rule apply to them? We think that if they don't leave the US, maybe it won't, but if it happens through next year's lottery, maybe it will. So we don't know. What's the likelihood that this 100K proclamation applies to STEM OPT acclimate? Yeah, we don't know exactly.
question.
Um, how does this affect someone with an approved H-1B in the past and they move to a different country for a short period? They want to potentially move back to the US next year to recapture the remaining time on their 6-year period. Does that count as a new petition? I believe that should be cap exempt. I literally have a client in this position who is supposed to start a new job on October 8th, and the employer is very worried about them, and they're trying to look at all sorts of alternative plans, but I think we still have an argument to get them in, but we're gonna have to try that. It's unclear. Can you confirm if the fee applies to CPT to H-1B change of status? Once again, it might through the lottery, but also maybe not if it's a change of status and you don't travel internationally. I mean, it could just be that a lot of people get stuck in the US, which would be really rough, but I guess we
Yeah, it
can.
might just be like effectively a travel ban because as soon as you travel, you might have to pay the 100K on the way back.
Oh my God,
Mm.
okay. Will cap exempt concurrent H-1B visa petitions filed anytime after tomorrow be subject to the 100K fee, even if the White House said it applies only to new lottery-based petitions? We think it will not apply to them. We think that you will still be able to do that.
Wait, Sophie, can you clarify that? Because I actually thought you meant the reverse. So if you're applying for a cap exempt H-1B, are you saying that that's actually that you don't have to pay the fee, or could like maybe expound on that a little bit?
Oh, oh, no, 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 no. Thank you for calling me on that.
Yeah.
This is a gray area because assuming it's a cap exempt, this was probably a new H-1B for this person and they didn't have it before. So I guess if you're already on cap, like if you're working for a university already and you want to add new concurrent employment, you're probably
Hmm.
fine. If you need to get a brand new cap exempt for the first time, that's a gray area where we don't know. Thank you. That's an
Got it.
important
Of course.
distinction. Oh gosh, what trends do we anticipate with the L1 going forward? No idea. Their early stage L1s are still subject to scrutiny. We hear that blanket L1 administrative processing for large corporations has increased. So I think that more people might move to L1 if this continues, but even that faced a lot of scrutiny in the first administration. So don't know. Um, the proclamation talks about people entering. Yeah, this is the same question. This is
Yeah. A
the
lot of F1, a lot
question
of
on
F1 STEM OPT.
everybody's mind. Okay, I think we answered it for the
Answered
most part.
that. This is
How
a
does
new one.
how does this affect someone who switched from H-1B to B2 and then got a new job and switched back to H-1B? We think it won't apply to you. We think it won't apply to you. Yeah. How this will affect in-country transfers. We think it will not affect in-country transfers. Uh, do H-1B renewals considered as new petitions? We think that renewals will not be considered new petitions. That seems like the latest, but we'll need to get confirmation on this next week. Uh,
I'm just going to interrupt you, Sophie, to just
yeah.
say, yeah, there are a bunch of people asking stuff in the webinar chat.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, we'll probably go to that after we're done just to
Yeah,
cover them. But, we're answering questions on the Q&A
great point.
in the Zoom.
Mm.
So anyway,
Oh,
Sophie.
here's a gold card question.
Mm.
Will the EB1A be replaced by the $1 million gold card, or will the EB1A be denied because others are paying or expected to pay $1 million? This is another wonderful question. I think that the legal basis for this gold card thing is even less strong than the H-1B proclamation. So, uh, the verbal remarks were different also between, what people were saying and what was actually written. But for the gold card, it's saying that they will basically mm, they will basically determine that the 1 million or $2 million is proof of extraordinary ability and national interest and allow people to apply within those categories. There was additional talk of reallocation of like, I think 30,000 green cards and try, or maybe in 30 days they were going to reallocate green cards from EB1, 2, and 3. I think that's like a very clear violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is a statute, a law passed by Congress. So it's a lot more firm than a regulation. So I think that there's just going to be more EB1A applicants, but EB1A is still subject to priority dates. So you can't just like give out a bunch of new green cards. Like you could approve a bunch of I-140 petitions and then those people would get a new priority date. But theoretically, the people who got their 2014 priority date would still be at the front of the line for EB1A if this is being interpreted under the law as it is now. So yeah. Um, Somebody's H-1B is still in progress from last April and March and April's lottery. We don't think it will apply to you. We think it's just for next year. Does it apply to existing owners of H-1B? We don't think so. How does a proclamation change apply to change of status from B2 to original or previous H-1B? We think it will not apply. We think it will not apply to a change of employer. If somebody has travel in 5 days, will it be affected? I don't think anybody should leave the country next week. I would postpone and get, refundable tickets. I don't think it's safe, but if you have to, you got to do what you got to do. I think it'll probably be okay, but who knows? Like, there's been so much change in the last 24 hours. Uh, what exactly is the corporate gold card? Well, you get a certain number of points and you get travel rewards and it's a really great website. It has beautiful design and branding. You can go look at it. I think what it is, it's like goldcard.gov
They
or
got
something.
the founder of Airbnb to design the website. Fun
They
fact.
did.
Yeah.
Oh,
Joe
wow.
Gebbia.
Beautiful design. Beautiful. Thanks, man. I love the eagle. Oh, it's called Trump Card dot.
.gov.
Yeah.
Funny name.
Yeah. And there's a platinum version that's 5 mil. So okay, the corporate version is basically the company pays $2 million on your behalf, and that is supposedly evidence of your extraordinary ability. So that's what that is. For a 2 million contribution, you receive US residency in record time with the Trump corporate gold card for your employees. After a processing fee and DHS vetting, onboard your preferred candidate. Allows your business to transfer access from one employee and grant it to another with the cost of a transfer fee and DHS vetting. A small annual maintenance fee will also apply. Very interesting. That's not compatible with the current EB1A statutory framework. Might be great for America. great for people, but I think we might need like Congress ultimately to pass a law if they want to make this sort of a thing.
So if you have an idea, because a lot of the questions you're answering are like earlier on in the call and we already answered them, what do you think we
Yeah.
start backwards and try to
Oh,
get some
okay. Oh,
meaningful
that's a great
things?
idea.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Um, the proclamation includes a possible national interest exception. Can I speak on this? Um, yeah, and then maybe Deedy, you could be the question asker for the rest, and then you can focus on which ones we haven't really covered yet and try to
Right,
get
because we
more
have a
broad
lot. So
coverage.
let me try to synthesize as you answer these questions.
That
Yeah.
would be great. What we know about the national interest exception is not very much, except the Homeland Security Secretary can say, like, this is just an example, but they could be like, all doctors are in the national interest, or all AI employees are in the national interest, or anybody with a PhD and a postdoc in computer science is in the national interest, or any employee of company A or company B is in the national interest. So they can, or they could say John Doe is in the national interest. So they could do it in a whole lot of ways. There's no application process yet, but this is presumably something we would argue when we're filing the H-1B originally. So, I think.
Got it. I know you answered this already, but since it came up a couple of times, I just wanted to clarify. So if you have an H-1B right now and you haven't gotten it stamped yet, say you're transitioning from an F1 and you leave the country to get it stamped, do you think that 100K fee applies?
I don't think so.
Mm,
But I really wouldn't encourage anybody to go for initial visa stamping right now.
got it. There's an interesting question that I like we haven't talked about yet, which is how do you think this impacts GC processing times? And in parens, I like the suggestion, like thinking maybe less submissions, or what do you make of how this impacts GC processing
Question.
times?
I would love to ask you a question about this too, because I know you like you're in the weeds of the data on this. But
Mm,
I mean, I think this will serve to decrease global demand for US immigration status because there's only some like gluttons for punishment who are startup founders who are like, no, this will just make me more intense about my mission. I will overcome anything, right? A lot of people are like, why would I want to raise my kids in this volatile environment? Like, let me go somewhere where I can just live in peace. So it's probably, and also employers, I mean, like, why would I want to bother with that? It sounds too complicated, right? So I think we'll have to see, but probably part of the goal is to decrease the demand. So maybe there might be some more rapid forward movement for those who are willing to stick around. Maybe TBD.
yeah, I mean, I can give
Like,
you my
yeah, I want
version.
to hear your latest take because I haven't gotten to ask you about this lately, but we just had the October visa bulletin come out and there was some limited forward movement. What's your feeling? Because I get the question all the time, like if I'm getting my EB1A priority date for the first time, how long am I going to have to wait for a green card if I'm from India? And I like randomly speculating 4 to 5 years based on research I did years ago. But what are you seeing with those numbers right now, Deedy?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the first big movement of the data filing on EB1 for Indians on the October bulletin, and I haven't had a check. Well, I looked. The data on the actual backlog by month is not available yet. I was somewhat surprised by that amount of movement because the thing that happens, especially with EB1s that are backlogged, is a lot of people are transferring their EB2 petitions with a older priority date and essentially skipping to the front of the line at such volume that the line then ceases to move forward. The data filing moving forward without the final action date moving forward, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that just means that you get more people can get their EAD and advance parole so they can at least travel and feel a little bit comfortable. But it still doesn't mean any movement on the actual green card, meaning like you don't start your 5-year ticker for citizenship yet.
Right.
And anecdotally, I will say that, I've just heard a lot more people being interested in the EB1, more than ever before, specifically the EB1A, and so
Well, I think your blog helped set off a national trend. It was like around October and November. It was like right around Thanksgiving when the election campaigns were really starting to go into full swing, like almost 2 years ago. And I feel like everybody was just like sharing the links to your blogs around Thanksgiving and being like, well, why don't you have an EB1A? Why don't you have an EB1A? And like, that was it. Like, all immigration lawyers across the country were immediately affected from then on.
Well, funnily enough, like I actually haven't seen any uptick in the AB1A filing data. So like a small uptick, but not significant. But
Oh,
anecdotally, I do hear a bunch of people being interested in it.
funny. Wow.
And
Maybe
let
just
me.
it expanded beyond professors because I think people weren't really like hadn't hit the collective consciousness for most people yet that like
Mhm.
non-researchers could qualify. So,
Exactly. I think a lot of people view an AB1 as hey, I need to have scholarly, publications to be able to do this. And for me, anecdotally, I have a lot of friends say at, these AI companies that are doing such tremendous work but may not necessarily publish research who are like, yeah, maybe I should go and do this. And they're a great fit, and a lot of them have now figured out their situation.
mhm.
I'm scanning through the list of questions again, and a lot of the similar ones, a lot of F1 questions. I'm reading them out loud. Of F1 questions, H-1B transfers, we already answered those. Stamping. Um, there's a couple on E2. So I'm just gonna read this question
Yeah.
verbatim. If I want to do a business, can I do E2? How long would it take? Currently on STEM OPT and trying to do H-1B this year. So, do you
Yeah.
have a
Oh, yes. Okay. So, rapid overview. If you are a citizen of India, China, Brazil, Russia, you're not going to be able to qualify for an E2. It is a specific visa for people whose countries of citizenship have a treaty of trade and commerce with the United States. So a lot of people with Western Europe's citizenship, some like Caribbean nations, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, they can qualify. And yeah, absolutely, you can do a change of status from STEM OPT to E2 if you've typically if you've invested like $100,000 into a business, you can buy a yogurt franchise, you can buy a restaurant, you can maybe buy a gas station, but entrepreneurs can use it too who want to build tech companies. But there's two limitations with this visa. One is if you get it done in the United States, you have to completely repeat the entire application process when you want to get a visa stamp because the consulates don't care what USCIS decided. They don't accept the I-797 approval notice. You have to like restart with them. So it might be better to do it from the consulate, but that could take many months or even a year. The other thing is that it is not the best for startup founders who are planning to blitzscale and raise significant external capital because of the dilution on the cap table. If you're if the percentage of ownership from of citizens of your country or companies, parent companies of your country, domiciled in your country, dips below 50% of the US company cap table, then the visa becomes invalid. So I had these like Scandinavian founders that were about to raise a $40 million Series B, and they were all scrambling because they had to like rejigger everything to either, keep the percentage ownership high or like move to O1s very quickly. And so it's great for lifestyle businesses, I would say.
Got it. I know we're almost at time. How do you want to do this? Do you want to go a couple over and
I
answer some?
can go a few more minutes if there's some like interesting, juicy questions
Yeah,
we have.
I think there's
Yeah,
some good ones, so I think let's just keep going and see
cool.
if people stick around. A person asked, my wife is on an approved H4. She's not in the country right now. Can she travel back to the US in October without any hiccups?
We think so. We think so. That being said, might be, we just don't know what's happening. So you might want to reunite your family sooner just for some peace of mind, but it should be fine for her to travel back.
Got it. Okay, some more transfers, renewals, starting companies, students. So we answered a lot of this. Um, there's a question on O1, but I'm just gonna skip that because it seems not relevant to the H-1B situation. Let me go to the chat. Um, does the new visa fee affect H-1B1?
Oh. That's a great question. H-1B is for people from Chile and Singapore. Um, wow. Potentially, let me research the law here real quick. Because that is a subsection of 101A 15H-1B of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Um, let's read let's read the statute. I think it might,
Mm,
which is kind of interesting. There's not too many people who get those. Because those are such small countries with low levels of immigration. But I wonder. Okay, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at that more, but I think it's likely because I think that is a subsection of this regulation that would, or the statute that would be encompassed.
got it. There's another question about you know, should I still file my EB-1A petition while there's uncertainty about the H-1B renewal? Because I have not gotten it stamped yet.
I I don't really know what that means, but I would say if somebody thinks they're qualified for an EB-1A and they already have it in process or they're close to filing it, that law still completely exists. So it would be better to just like go for it and get it in and try to use every opportunity.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, now look, I think we're coming up on time, and I just want to make sure that, you do one last recap of all of the common questions. So I'm just gonna try to summarize them again.
Oh, great. Yeah. Fabulous.
They F1, we'll do F1, we'll do haven't gotten it stamped yet, transfers and renewals. So those are the
Okay.
four, I think, most common questions across
Okay.
the stack.
Remind
So
me as we go through. We'll
sure,
start
sure,
with
let's do it.
F1.
Yeah.
So F1, if you're already in the US on F1 and you have not gotten an H-1B through the lottery yet, we think there's a chance that you could go through next March's lottery and get selected. And as long as you don't travel internationally, this fee might never apply to you. So we think that's it for F1. Okay.
Okay.
What's the next category?
Let's talk about haven't gotten my H-1B stamped yet. Should
Okay.
I go get it stamped? Should I not go get it stamped? Does it apply to me if I haven't got it stamped yet?
Okay. We think that it does not apply to you if you already have an approved H-1B, even if you haven't activated it yet. That being said, it's a very common question and a gray area, and we do expect further clarification on that in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So I would say it might be, if you were thinking of traveling to a visa interview this week, it might be safest to hold off unless it's absolutely necessary. We think the fee should not apply to you, but we are awaiting clarification.
Awesome. Then renewals. So 3 years are up. I'm getting my renewal done. What's the
Think you'll be
advice?
safe. Think that you will not have to have an additional fee charged.
And if you do a renewal, are you still advising people to not go get it stamped until the situation sort of clears out?
I wouldn't want you to be I mean, somebody's got to be the guinea pig, but let it be the people who are already outside the US or something, than rather than traveling and seeking it out.
Yep, and then let's do transfers. So if you're doing a new job, getting a new job, and you already have an H-1B,
Um,
what do you think it applies or not?
should be fine. I don't think those employers will have to pay anything for that.
Uh, got it. And then a lot of B2 questions. So what does it mean for people who are on a B2 visa who want to get an H-1B?
Yeah. Probably it's still possible. If you already had an H-1B in the past to come in and change your status, but it's probably not going to be possible to like come in. Let's see, if you wanted to get an H-1B through next year's visa lottery through a change of status, then let's say you would want to come in 5 months before October. So, like, let's say you did the lottery in March and you got selected, and your employer was going to file a petition for you by June, and then you came in on a B1 in like May, and then your employer filed a change of status for you to take effect on October 1st, and you were just going to like wait and not work, that seems to be the exact situation that they're trying to prevent that could be penalized. So I would say like don't do that one.
Got it. And maybe I'll answer one last question that I see that I can answer, which
Yeah,
is,
great.
will startups or mid-sized companies avoid hiring people who would need sponsorship in the future? Obviously, this is speculation. We don't know what we don't know, but anecdotally, yeah, I mean, I do think that there are some startups that will continue to hire and just pay the fee, but also have heard. Just a lot of founders just being worried about it. And so, especially if you're a founder who themselves haven't seen an immigration journey, I think for a large fraction of those founders, it's almost like a default no. Like, do I really want to take on this additional burden of something I don't really understand when I have like 100 other things going on in my company? I do think it's not ideal for that situation. So I anticipate there to be a slight decrease in hiring on H-1Bs from startups if this goes through and gets approved.
On the other hand, the situation where it might increase startup hiring, if we just play this out, like let's pretend this becomes like the actual law. There's probably going to be a lot of fighting about it, and we don't know if this is going to happen. But if it did, probably be a dramatic decrease in H-1B utilization from IT consulting and maybe big tech. So maybe there would be less demand, maybe less than 85,000 a year. So now there's no randomness because you could just apply for an H-1B at any time and you'd probably get it. And then if I think what will really be the determinant, Deedy, is what is determined to be in the national interest as an exception.
That's right.
I think that's the key because whoever's in those industries will be like, oh my God, it's a bonanza. Let's just like bring in the people we need. So we have yet to see how that would play out.
That's right. And that could be a great second order effect. So if you do get the applicants come down below 85,000, there's more assurity that you will get an H-1B. If you're in the lottery, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, hey, wait, I can just pay this fee. I amortize it in my head like around 3 to 4 years, but I know that this employee
Or
is
the fee gets waived because of the
or
excess.
or the fee gets waived. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Um, anyway, I think we're a little
Oh,
over and we
cool.
did
Oh
a
my
bunch of
God.
questions. I
We
really
did
enjoyed this,
it.
Sophie.
Oh my God. And we
And
had really great, we had so many people listen to us throughout. So thank you everybody for staying with us and all the amazing questions. This is so fun and so glad we can help. I think we both try to do like Seva and selfless service and help people and pay it forward and stuff. So Deedy, I'm so grateful for you to all the amazing stuff you do to shine a light on this and help people, and so glad that we could come together and help everybody
one
today.
last question, Sophie, which is people are asking about the recording of the video.
Oh yeah,
I do see this being recorded. So is it something you're going
yes.
to share out?
We're going to be able to share this with everybody who registered. So absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay. Well, now you can go
Thanks, guys.
actually enjoy your birthday because we've determined the world is at peace. There is a path forward. We're going to figure it out. So now you can go enjoy. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Sophie. And thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully this helped clear things out for you. And
Oh,
thanks, guys. See you
wonderful. Have
next
a
time.
great night, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.